Hi there, I'm Fred Trost. Welcome to this edition of Michigan Weekend. Now, this is a special show. I mean, it's not, well, it's sort of special in that it's the last show of Michigan Weekend. That's right. Last episode after a year and a half. But even though it's no laughing matter to me, what I'm going to do for this last show is go through some of the comic vignettes, some of the humorous situations, the humorous episodes that we filmed over the years on Michigan Weekend. We're going to, first of all, have Wilbur with us. Of course, he's done many comic things, losing his hat, losing his head, the whole works. We're also going to do some fairly serious things, such as pursuing the search for wild macaroni, which we find in the North Woods. So stick around. We're going to be right back to start this episode of Michigan Weekend, but first, here's a message from Meyer Thrifty Acres. When you think of the sporting goods department at Meyer, you probably think of the why pay more prices you find on the name brand merchandise. But don't forget about the wide selection. Take camping items. Meyer has tents, stoves, lanterns, and all the accessories and parts that go with them, including fuel. Then there's sleeping bags, cots, air mattresses, pumps for the mattresses, and catalytic heaters to keep warm on those chilly nights. Then there's everything from axes and saws to porta potties and tent stakes. Check out the full line of camping gear in the sporting goods department at Meyer Thrifty Acres. Now, continuing with the light side of Michigan Weekend, let's do a strange but true segment. You might remember the fish with two mouths that we had last summer. Strange but true. Now, here is an unusual fish head. It's the head of a Chinook salmon, and of all things, it has two mouths. At least that's what Virgil Edwards tells me. Virgil came all the way from St. Louis, Michigan, to bring this fish head that you caught. Well, you caught the whole fish, but you brought the head.
Caught the whole fish.
Ate the rest of it. When did you catch it? Tell me the circumstances.
Well, we caught it at Manistee Lake, and it was about 1:30 in the morning.
Oh,
and
night
we were
fishing.
night fishing. It's more quiet then. You can get the boats out there to disturb your fishing.
Mm-hmm.
And we were slackline fishing, is what I generally call it. And me and Vern Banky, that's a friend of mine. And we had caught the fish, and we had two other fish in the boat. And the fish sure looked unusual to us, but we didn't pay any attention to it till we got up to shore the following morning, to clean them. And I said, my God, that sure is a weird-looking fish. We ought to contact the DNR and see what the devil they got to say about it.
And you found out that this Chinook indeed has two mouths, the primary mouth here and a smaller one. The smaller mouth actually has teeth in it. Where did the small mouth go?
It actually goes back through here and into the lining of the stomach. It has to, both mouths feed into the stomach itself.
So do you think it's possible that the small mouth actually worked and could catch minnows?
Oh, definitely, because the bottom jaw here does work as much as the top jaw does right here.
So it has muscles in it too?
Yes, it does.
An unusual fish, undoubtedly a mutation. Well, isn't that something? What are you going to do with this head?
Well, I'm going to have it mounted and keep it. I think eventually I don't believe anybody will ever catch another one.
Well, that's strange but true, the Chinook salmon with two mouths. And now here's a little piece of film of something that doesn't involve a fish that's quite as big as that. In fact, it's a very small trout. But to trout fishermen, the size of trout really don't make too much difference. They're fishing very intently out on the stream, go through the whole battle. I really get a kick out of this situation here. The fisherman goes down to net his prize, and of course, it's a prize that's worth hanging on to. Well, that is if you can. Now going on to another strange but true sequence. This took place on a canoe trip that I took, about 10 years ago. You can tell when you see the film. I looked a bit younger then, but this involved our lunches that we have now. The buddy I was with, he made all the sandwiches for our week-long fishing trip at home before we left. He said this would save us a lot of time. So he said, there you go, you want a sandwich? I said, well, sure, but I was looking at this unusual bird that was along the shore, and I was going to try to photograph it. I put the sandwich in my mouth, and doggone it, I had to get a shot. That bird stepped right into the light, dropped my sandwich into the water. Well, I tell you, making sandwiches up a week before a camping trip can be very useful. All you have to do is wring them out and, well, take a bite of it. They might be a little spongy, but I found that it really wasn't too bad. Now I'd like to get serious for a minute here. This episode happened on the same canoe trip that you just saw with the sponge sandwich, but this is a serious situation, and I want to give a warning about this too. This involved, again, Gabe Cherum, my partner. We were going through some moose territory, seeing if we could photograph some moose up there. Very beautiful country in the Northland. Oh, you know how it is up in the Upper Peninsula. We came across something. It wasn't a moose. Very unusual. Gabe points to the shore and says, "Look, over there, wild macaroni." Oh, you know, my reaction to that is, wild macaroni? Oh, no, it can't be. Well, Gabe insisted that we go over there and take a look at it, and honestly, I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't. There it was, growing along the shore, wild macaroni, a small patch of it. I'd say not more than 15 feet long from end to end. We went over there and picked the wild macaroni, and believe me, we cooked it up the next day. It was incredibly good. It tastes almost as good as the stuff you get out of the box. I say almost as good. I guess it's just a commentary on society today. We're so used to the packaged foods that come out of the boxes. When we eat natural things, they often taste unusual. But we picked that wild macaroni. Another thing we found nearby, there was a loon there, and we found out that loons were definitely attracted to wild macaroni. And the DNR has asked me to caution people this year, please don't go out and pick wild macaroni. It's an endangered species, and we're looking forward to the day when Michigan will once again be covered with wild macaroni beds. We're going to be right back with more Michigan Weekend, more humorous comic vignettes. First, after this message from Meyer Thrifty Acres. You know, you've seen me advertise a lot of special prices on merchandise in the sporting goods department at Meyer Thrifty Acres, especially the hunting and fishing gear. There's no doubt about it. Meyer has a wide selection of name brands, and there's new merchandise every week. Right now, there's the last of the ice fishing gear on the shelves, and very soon you'll see the spring steelhead gear, a special sale on trout fishing tackle, waders, and smelt nets. Check out the wide selection of sporting goods, name brands at why pay more prices this week in the sporting goods department at Meyer Thrifty Acres. You know, it seems that hit motion pictures are always filmed in the big cities, but some of them could be filmed right here in Michigan in the outdoors. For example, Rocky. Now, that could have been filmed at Sleeping Bear Dunes. See if you don't agree. You know, Marlon Brando movies were popular years ago with all on his motorcycles. Well, let's go up to Boblo Island next to Mackinac Island in northern Lake Huron and find out what the young thugs up there do in the summer, very similar to Marlon Brando and his movies. Well, that's what they do up on Bob Lowe Island, northern Lake Huron. Right next to Mackinac Island, there's a small population of people who spend their summers there. The kids get out on the dock, and one of the few things they have to do there, well, they have a lot to do outdoors, but as far as recreation, there's not much in the way of pool halls and pinball machines and all that, so they get out on the dock with their bicycles, tie a rope on the end of the bike. Reason for that is so they can haul it up easily and try it once again. And now let's get on to our motion picture star of the outdoors, Wilbur. He goes through all sorts of antics. Let's look at a couple of them right now. Oh boy, there's the big one that got away. We're going to be right back with more of Wilbur after this message from the good people at Meyer Thrifty Acres. You've heard the slogan, Meyer prices bring you in, Meyer people bring you back. Well, here's a Meyer person who brings you back, Terry McBurney. Terry's the head sporting goods buyer for Meyer. He's an avid fisherman. Salmon, steelhead, and bass are his favorites. He camps with his family, and he's a duck and pheasant hunter. So when it comes to buying sporting goods, Terry McBurney knows the importance of buying name brand merchandise and offering it to you at why pay more prices. Just another example of the fine people working for you at Meyer Thrifty Acres. Wilbur has done quite a number of wacky things during his career on Michigan Weekend, and during the days when we covered general recreation activities, not just hunting, fishing, and camping, Wilbur gave skateboarding a try. Quite a wild experience. You might remember it. Well, that was the end of skateboarding, at least on the show, but that wasn't the end of Wilbur. He came back to treat us to a number of outdoor situations, impart some of his knowledge to us, and some of that had to do with packing a day pack, what to take along with you in the woods, how to survive. Of course, one of the first things he taught us is how to build a fire in the woods. Now, of course, you can carry a lot of things in your day pack, and he learned that you should carry some things in your day pack to start a fire with. So he used his head. He figured you can find sticks in the woods. You can always start a fire by rubbing two sticks together. So hey, how about this idea? Take some charcoal lighter with you in your day pack. Well, let's see how this works for Wilbur. Well, a great idea, but that just didn't pan out. Wilbur had to learn patience, and when he learned patience, sticking to it, working hard, why, by golly, it all worked out. Now everybody knows you should carry a compass in the woods, but Wilbur figured he had so much room in his day pack, why doesn't he carry something a little more practical, maybe something that you could eat as well as use to find your way in the woods. So he used a loaf of bread like he'd often heard about in the fairy tales, but you know, he evidently went in a circle, came across some breadcrumbs. Well, he thought the best way to figure out if he was going in a circle or not was to taste it. He said, by golly, that's right, same bread. Now what is he gonna do? Well, when you're lost in the woods, what are you going to do? Wilbur was calling and yelling and screaming, and he thought, well, you know, he did bring 2 dimes. And by golly, if he didn't find a phone on the side of a tree, it's very unusual. Most people, if they found a phone in the woods like that, they wouldn't have 2 dimes with them, but Wilbur's always prepared. So he put his 2 dimes in. Wouldn't you know it, get out in the woods like that, you got one of those phone booths that just doesn't work. That gets a little upsetting. Okay, now if he can just take his day pack off, it's getting to be dark. Now, Wilbur did use his head and he brought a light along. Somebody told him in a checklist, you know, bring a light because it's going to get dark out there. Well, he not only brought a light, but he brought an extension cord. And he was lucky that day. He found a receptacle on the tree. But look at that. Isn't that upsetting? He has a 110 plug with the 220 receptacle. Doggone it. Bad luck for Wilbur. Now, first aid. He learned you should be prepared for first aid and use your day pack for this. Most people would take a first aid kit with them, but look at what Wilbur does. He gets very careless with his hatchet. Dangerous stuff, but instead of thinking about his first aid kit, uh-oh, he's in trouble now. Look at that. Took his hand right off. Oh, well, he uses his head. He said, I brought my day pack along, didn't think about his first aid kit, put his hand in his day pack and took off for the hospital. I don't know, Wilbur. Strange solutions to these problems. But I guess you can understand Wilbur a little better when you find out exactly what it is that he carries in his day pack to make his sojourns much more comfortable in the woods. He's got tire irons, decoys, a bowling ball, all sorts of things. He's ready for recreation. Oh, he's ready for bad weather. Just ready for everything. And you know, he's also prepared for those days when maybe the sun isn't shining, it's a little dull out in the woods, and he doesn't care for the scenery. What's a guy to do? Well, let's see what Wilbur does. Oh boy, that's Wilbur's idea of scenery in the outdoors. I tell you. Well, we've learned quite a few things from Wilbur over the years. Interesting man, interesting man. We're going to be right back with more Michigan Weekend and a wrap-up of the show and the series right after this message from Meyer Thrifty Acres. People ask me why I buy my sporting goods at Meyer Thrifty Acres. Well, the answer's easy. Number one, it's obvious, the price. You can't beat the low prices at Meyer. And number two, we're talking about name brand merchandise. Number three, the wide selection. Camping gear, hunting gear, fishing tackle, complete lines. And besides that, if you get to know the Meyer people in the sporting goods department, you're going to find that they're very helpful and nice. That's why I buy all my sporting goods at Meyer. I know what I'm looking for in sporting goods, and if you know what you want, why pay more? Well, I myself have seen a lot of strange things in the outdoors, and I'm sure that in the time you've been watching Michigan Weekend, you've seen a number of strange things too, maybe even on this show, who knows. But why don't we close the show, close the series with my favorite comic vignette of all, a story about a guy on a lake who, well, he was bottom fishing, and he got into some problems he didn't anticipate. Well, down the drain for that fella, but I hope it's not down the drain for me. I've been talking with my good sponsors, Meyer Thrifty Acres, about what we're going to do since this is the last Michigan Weekend TV show of this series. Well, we're talking about some outdoor TV specials focusing on Michigan, maybe an outdoor radio show, who knows. And sometime in the future, I sure hope to see you outdoors. It's a great place to be. And if you do see me, come up to me, introduce yourself. I'd like to meet you. Hey, thanks for watching. Michigan Weekend has been brought to you by Meyer Thrifty Acres, your one-stop shopping store, the place you can buy all of your sporting goods and outdoor gear at why pay more prices. Of course, I'd like to thank Meyer Thrifty Acres for their support from the beginning for the past year and a half. Also, studio crew Larry Rowe, who's been directing the show from its start, Calvin Washington, floor director, Brooks Rawlison, cameraman. Can't forget Kathy Fleck, who was associate producer and co-host at the beginning of the show, Wolverine Camper Company, who supplied me a camper to film the recipes in, the DNR, the Michigan Travel Bureau, especially Stan Levency and Gary Marshall. Most importantly, I want to thank you viewers. I hope we'll be getting together soon. So long.